Well, all right. We're gonna go ahead and get started since it's the top of the hour. And I just love seeing all of you here. Thank you guys so much for joining us. When Carl and I get to meet with you guys every month, I am convinced that you guys are some of the greatest people on the planet. And we are genuinely honored to have you as part of our CMI family. And that's truly what this is. It really is a family. I really feel that way. And so I just want to say a heartfelt welcome to our September training event on hosting community-wide date nights. And as you know, last month's event, we focused on marketplace connections with Mike Sharrow of C12, and he shared his insights and best practices for engaging with business leaders and ministry in the marketplace, really. And so if you didn't get a chance to see it, I just want to encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. But for today's event, we have an exciting lineup of amazing speakers, and that includes Ted Lowe, Carl Caton, Devin Tharp, and Ted Randall. And as always, there will be a Q&A session at the close of the event, so you'll be able to have the opportunity to ask any questions that you would like to any of our speakers. And I also just wanted to let you know that we are recording this entire session, and we'll be putting that up on our YouTube channel. So if you ever want to go back and review any part of it, you'll have that option. And plus, I'll make sure to share the slide deck with you in our Slack workspace once the event wraps up. So you'll have access to the slide deck as well. So before we begin today, we always like to begin with prayer. And today we have Mark Ellis from Little Rock, Arkansas, and he's going to be leading us in prayer today. So Mark, whenever you are ready.
Father, we thank you. And we just ask that you would be with us during this time, that you have given us such a wonderful network of friends and coworkers through Marriage Initiative. And we have opportunities to reach out into every corner of this country. I just pray today that you would give us something special that we could use in each of our ministries, that we could begin to build, that we could inspire pastors and marriage leaders as they really seek how to touch their couples and families. Lord, I just pray that you'd raise up men, fathers, and husbands to really come back into the church and to just latch on to your truth so that they can lead well and be an example. I pray for each of our speakers today that you would give them clarity as they communicate, that we might just be able to understand how what they have to offer fits into what we're doing currently and how we can build on that with vision for the future. Just ask that you'd be with us now. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, thank you so much for your prayer, Mark. We appreciate you. And so first on our agenda, we have the privilege of hearing from Carl Caton. And most of you, I'm sure, know Carl, but if you haven't had the privilege of meeting him, Carl serves as the president and founder of Marriage Initiative, and really, truly, the heart and the passion behind everything that we do stems from this man. So, Carl, whenever you're ready, we are all ears.
Okay, well, great. It's fun to be with you all today. And man, as I kind of look around the room, so to speak, I just see so many people that I love and admire and appreciate and value. And so thanks again for coming together today. This is September, and we're thinking strategically what's coming up for us around the corner. And what's coming up for us is a really strategic month in the year of a CMI team leader, and that is February. A lot of great stuff going on in February. But I want to go back to kind of our beginning for just a minute to talk about some of the things that we were doing in our early stage. More than anything, we were meeting with people. Our work in San Antonio began with a season of prayer, a patient season of prayer. That was pretty unusual for me to have the patient part, and a patient season of prayer, which began to lead us to begin just reaching out to people around the city who were serving marriages. It was called a season of discovery, where one person led us to another. I just committed to have coffee with 2 people a week, and little did I know that in the next 3 years, I would sit down with almost 300 people who were serving marriages. It was such an amazing season of discovery. But something happened in 2011 that really changed our trajectory, and that was Date Night San Antonio. In 2011, we hosted our first event in our city that was truly a citywide event. I think Mark Ellis was here. I think Mark Ellis was there at Date Night event. In fact, I invited him to speak. But little did we know we were going to fill a room full of people. I want to tell you that we were holding our breath, because 7 days before this event in a venue that would hold 1,100 people, 7 days before, we had about 300 people signed up, and we were scrambling around thinking, oh my goodness, do we need to move to a smaller venue? Do they have a smaller? It's going to look so small. It's going to look so disappointing. But yeah, this is San Antonio, and in the last week, 1,100 people signed up, and we filled not only the entire base, bottom floor, but so much of the upper section of First Baptist Church downtown. It was an exciting, energizing moment. It was a time when we were honestly just kind of surprised at the turnout, and it unleashed a whole lot of things around our city. The newspaper reached out to us and wanted to publish this article, "Coming Together to Save Marriage," and they thought it was interesting, and we were invited to come on radio stations. People hadn't heard about this before. But there are 3 things that happened when we had our first very significant citywide date night event. 3 things happened. The first was, for the first time, people started taking us seriously. It gave us credibility more than anything, and that was really important with our relationships, especially with church leaders. Second, it opened the doors to hundreds of connections. We did a really good job of gathering people's contact information, and we built, oh gosh, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 relationships just through that first event. And then, as I said before, it opened the doors to communication. It opened the doors to us being on the radio, in the newspaper, being on people's podcasts, which then was actually kind of a new thing. And so it was a really significant moment in our history. And shortly after that, what started happening around the country was the Date Night Comedy Tour. And as you all know, people like Ted Cunningham and John Branyan, but that was led by the one and only Ted and Nancy Lowe. Ted and Nancy brought a lot of laughter to it, but they were also the host couple. And there were a lot of really fun things that happened in date night comedy. And I think one of the things that we learned from these fun date night events is that, ultimately, this is not where couples are going to come to be educated on how to grow in their marriage. They're not going to learn how to communicate and handle conflict. But there are some things that a date night comedy do for us, especially as community leaders. But the elements of a great date night event include fun and laughter. In fact, I've heard, 70 to 80% of all the content should just be fun and laughter. Certainly, there needs to be a chance to learn and grow. But more than anything, for us as a community leaders, it gives us a chance to call people to take a next step. And in my slide here, and I say, this is why I love Ted Lowe. And this is why we're hosting Ted on this call, is because Ted brings something really unique to this type of an event, because Ted has all the elements that are necessary for you strategically to be able to turn this into a real watershed moment for your city. Now, I'm going to talk about what some of those elements are later, but I am going to tell you that we've got Ted coming back to San Antonio. He's been here many times, but coming back to San Antonio on September 28th for a date night event at Community Bible Church. That's just a couple of weeks around the road. And also, big news for Ted. He has just recently been on Focus on the Family, I think in June or July, talking about his new book. But we're real excited for the role that Ted plays what he can uniquely bring to one of these date night events. So I'm going to hand it back to Stephanie and let her introduce Ted, and then I'll come back in on the other side of Ted's presentation.
I'm just going to tell you a little about Ted in case you don't know his background. Ted's been married to Nancy since 1995, and they have 4 busy kids whom they serve as Uber drivers and sometimes parents. Ted believes that marriage is simpler than most people think, and that you can be better at it than you ever imagined. And Ted joined Family First in 2023, where he serves as a speaker, an author, All-Pro Dad podcast host, and director of For Us Marriage. Before joining Family First in 2023, he served as director of marriage strategies at Orange, director of married life at North Point Community Church, and the youth pastor at Saddleback Community Church. During his time at Saddleback, he graduated from Fuller Theological Seminary, and you can keep up with Ted's speaking tours, podcasts, publications, and For Us Marriage at tedlowe.com. And I just want to tell you that I have been listening to the audio version of Ted's new book, Us and Mine, and it offers such great content that's centered on renewing your mind when it comes to your spouse and your marriage. And I really highly recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, you should definitely get it. You should dig in and do the exercises at the end of each chapter. Don't skip those because it'll change your marriage. So without further delay, Ted, whenever you are ready.
Well, you guys, thanks so much for having me. Oh, now I can't see the people, and I'm just seeing my screen. I don't love that. Hold on a minute. Oh, it'll mess it up for you guys. Anyway, I'm going to pretend you guys are all there. Yeah, little side note, step on that book, you're listening to audio recording. Just a little background is I came in to record it, and they said, hey, our studio is being remodeled, so you're going to be in the bathroom. We have found it to be the best acoustics.
Oh,
and yeah, so that's what you're listening to. Now you will not be able to enjoy the rest of the book. Anyway, a little behind the scenes there. No, I have been doing a date nights for a really long time. I started doing marriage ministry actually as somebody that my whole job was to create date nights at our church. And this was 2001. They brought me on staff. Nancy and I've been married about 6 years at the time. We weren't even that great at it, but we were enthusiastic. But they said, we want you to do 6 weekends worth of marriage events, one night events. They weren't conferences, they were one night events. And they said, we want to try some stuff. And so we did, and some of it was great and some of it was not great. And we've learned, so we did that for 9 years, and we've been doing date nights ever since. And so I'm a big believer in date nights. But here is what I found for church leaders and those that are in the initiatives and different things. Like, sometimes people say, hey, Ted, we're really great at the counseling piece. We're really great at the networking piece. We're really great at all those pieces. But when it comes to the date night stuff, we kind of feel like we're out of our zone a little bit, and we don't know where to start. What does it look like? How do we get people there? Do people even want to be there? Like, what does it look like? And I think the biggest question that I hear is it worth it? You know, is this thing worth having? Are we going to go through all this? Does it make an impact? And Carl, you did a beautiful job saying, yeah, it does matter to the initiatives. And I believe it matters greatly to couples. But when it comes to gatherings right now, I think church leaders and organizations, they're a little taken off their game because of what happened during COVID. So the attendance is a little bit different and people are finding their way back. And when this was all happening, I just was like, God, you know, everybody keeps using the word unprecedented as if it's surprising you what's happened. Like, you've been handling the world, but since this has happened and the world got impacted, maybe you're surprised like the rest of us. And then what do? We always go back to scripture. And I think about this whole idea of people who are still staying at home and they don't want to get out. I think about Hebrews, and it says, let us, and I love the word us, like not let you, let all of us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. And you guys have all got this hope, right? You've got hope in God, and you've got hope for what can happen with initiative. And let us consider how we may spur one another on. And I love that. Like, when we think about date nights, all you guys are doing, it's this constant consideration of how can we reach our cities? How can we spur people on? There's so much negative news about marriage. Like, how do we spur them on towards what? Towards love and good deeds. Like, we do want them to be in love. And, as Ephesians says, encouraged in heart and united in love. We want them toward love, but also good deeds. Like, we want to help them to have good moves toward each other, and not just those kind of moves, but, other kind of moves, relational moves, where they connect and they can make the moves in the right directions toward their spouse. And then look at that. It says, not giving up meeting together. He says, do not give up. Don't give up. And then it says what? As some are in the habit of doing. This is why I love scripture right here. This is why we always know God is not surprised, because a lot of people right now, they've given up the habit of meeting together. They've given up the whole habit of we're not going to go to church right now because, we can watch it on the screen. If we don't show up, no one knows, no one notices. And it's just easier to do it here. And he says, in the habit, he says, but encouraging one another. He says, don't give up. Don't give up having gatherings. Don't give up. And then I love this version from the Message. He says, let's see how inventive we can be in encouraging and helping love. Let's see how inventive we can be. And I love this because I think that's what date night is all about. I think it's like, we got to think outside the box when it comes to date night. What does it look like? What could it feel like? How could it impact the city? So when somebody says, do I think it's worth it? I obviously say yes. If it's done well, it's worth it. And you guys are going, well, Captain Obvious, thank you very much, because we know this already. Anything's, it's only worth doing if it's done with excellence. I know this, but I've watched many well-meaning churches and organizations put a lot of time and effort towards date night, but maybe there was a few things they didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know. And so they didn't have the attendance they wanted. I hear this over and over. We were so pleased with the event. We just weren't pleased with the attendance. Like Carl was saying, we had 300 people signed up. And, and we don't do all this. I mean, we're doing all of this for God at the same time as we're doing this with excellence. We want to have people there, and we want their experience to be great, because it's making an impression on who we are, right? And who the city initiatives are. It's a big impression. It's a big come and see. And that's the power of it, that I think it's like, it gets loud and clear who you guys are. And they're going to find everybody in the initiative at the date night. This gives you an opportunity to say, hey, this is a really fun night, but what's really powerful is what we have for you next. Okay. So how do we do it? How do we create a great date night? So this is based off my own experiences of doing things, sometimes not so great, and sometimes they worked, and just watching how different organizations, things that were important that maybe they didn't know are important. And it starts with this. It starts with marketing. Okay. The most important thing you can do is get people there. And I know that sounds obvious, but we've got to get them there. And I've watched churches especially do this over and over, where they'll say, oh, it was so great, but we were disappointed with attendance. And I'd say, well, when did you start marketing? The Thursday before. And so you're like, no. And so what we have to do is we have to back out. Think big blockbuster films. Like, you're sitting there in the movies now, and it'll say Star Wars 12 coming out 2046. You're like, why are you telling me this now? But they get it, multi-million dollars. They know so much hangs in the balance. Let's go ahead and let people know. And the other thing of marketing is branding is key. Here's a hurdle that I've found over the years when it comes to marriage ministry. We have all heard the study that people see marriage ministry as boring, preachy, outdated, and feminine. We get that. But the other thing is, I call it the what's wrong hurdle. And what happens with a lot of things, if we brand things as a marriage conference, which is fine, and we're going to need to do that sometimes, or we got a marriage, seminar, what happens is when somebody tells their family and friends, we're going to the marriage seminar, what do the friends say? What's wrong? Are you guys okay? And what date night does, it removes that hurdle. It's something that couples actually understand, because sometimes they don't even understand what a marriage seminar would be, but they understand date night. And that has removed a tremendous hurdle and I've just watched this growth of date night happen. And I'm like, what just went on? And I think it was just the appeal of it. It was the appeal of the branding that we're going to have fun. Here's a couple of logos that I love. And Carl, I love the logo that you showed with CBC. Like that, when Carl and I were together meeting with the church when they revealed that logo, and I went, that is great. But this is some of the branding that I've seen over the years. And I thought, make it fun, make it look like something that couples want to go to. A church a couple months ago, they were having us in, and I said, how's the marketing going? How's that going? And they said, well, we're thinking about calling it a Conversation with Ted Lowe. And I thought, I'm not sure I could come up with anything that would be less appealing than a conversation with Ted Lowe. No, here's the thing. Let's just keep it real. There's no such thing as a famous Christian. Maybe Billy Graham. People in the community may know, probably don't know me, but here's what they do know. They know their spouse and they know date night. I said, don't market using me, market using them. Don't think about me. You think about date night. Think about what they're going to be appealed to. So this date night thing is so, so powerful. Here's another pieces of marketing. The other past branding is relational marketing is a must. This is where you get your key leaders inviting key leaders. You say to the key leaders, hey, listen, I know you've got a million things going on, but I need you to attend this. You have your high value leaders, which I know Carl talks about that a lot, inviting others. You go to the ministry, women's ministry leader, Women Make the World Go Round. Go to the dynamic lay couple and say, listen, here's what I need from you. I need for you to bring people. One of my favorite things that we used to do at our church is we would tell the small groups in our church would say, hey, we want you to think of this date night as your small group together. Don't be out another night of the week. Let this be your double dating, triple dating, quadruple dating, cinco dating, whatever that is. We want you to come together as a group, and you talking about mass pockets. You talking about expansion. When you start saying, I am marketing to groups of 12 total people, 6 couples. I mean, the math starts to really, really add up. Double dates. Sometimes would say, hey, you know what? If you buy a set of tickets, we're going to give you another set of tickets to invite that person you've been invited to church. Don't invite who's usually sitting next to you. This isn't for you to get a deal. We want you to bring other people. And that was a powerful thing. CMI, here's the thing. You need to bring your mama, your daddy, and your dog. Okay, maybe not your dog, but hey, listen, if they don't mind barking, bring them on. Okay, so you just market. Here's the other thing. Time is everything. Okay. If I've learned anything the hard way, this is one of the biggest. If you have this thing on the wrong night, for instance, if you have here in Atlanta, if you have a date night on a Georgia football game, your mama's not even going to be there with you. Your spouse is not going to be with you. It's going to be you. You could have it in your half bath at that point. So you're going to want to say, what's the date? And you're going to want to gauge and see, when is this happening? Okay. Here's the other thing. Promote early and consistently and with a big final push. Start as early as you can. Let that be on your radar. I mean, right out of the gate, we got to promote early and then consistent drips. We're going to keep people have to see something on social media. I think the studies it 5 times before they notice, which how sad does that make me right now? But you have to consistently do it. And then with a big final push, then lose your mind. Carl speaks so great to that going, we have 300 people right before. That must, and Carl, you need to talk about what that final push was, because that's it. This is when we get on board, right? We want to really, really push. Little side note, while your senior pastors may not be able to run the marriage ministry, if you can get them to promote it, that's massive. You can even tell them, you don't even have to come if you are out that night, but can you cheerlead what this is? Because that's massive, because he's got the ear or she's got the ear. The next one is clarity is crucial with this. And here's what I mean by this. If somebody goes looking for you online, they need to find you quickly. I think I did just a random survey of 100 largest church in the country. I went on their websites. To find marriage was beyond difficult. There might have been 4 or 5 that I thought, oh, it's easy for a married couple to go on there and say, this is for me. divorce care was way easier to find than marriage care. And I'll just not tangent about that. But what I'm saying, we've got to be clear. And here's the thing. I think from a marketing perspective, if you're marketing on a church site, a lot of times this is a car that there's no garage for. So if you think about your website, for a lot of churches, there are no marriage things. So we got to be really, really clear where it is. And this is why I love your guys' websites, is you keep pointing back to the city website because they're so clear. They're so clear. So just continue, like, what is this thing? Because you're going to get this lot. What is this thing? It's clear. It's a date night. It's going to be full of laughter and fun. Who's it for? It's for you. Okay. Other thing about marketing is promote. And this is probably one of the hugest things when I was thinking about today. Promote experience versus programming. Promote that this is going to be an experience and not just programming. And here's why. The reason people are giving up the habit of going to church is, in large part, is because they can watch it at home, right? I can just watch it on a screen. And so what churches are finding more and more is that they want to put, like, they're kind of going back old school. It's like, we need to have a pancake breakfast. We need to have these things. We need to have these experiences that will draw people back to church to the very thing that's not just around the word, but it's community around the word. Is they will connect with other people when people notice they're not there and it matters. And just from take it out of the church experience, millennials are way more experiential. They want things that, hey, I'm going to go experiencing this. They're not buying things as much as they are buying experiences. So when you're talking about promoting this, promote it as this is a date night experience. And we're going to talk about how to make it feel that way in a minute. But that is something so huge in your programming. So, and then for your event, now let's go to the event. Okay, we've talked about the marketing before. Now let's talk about the actual event. Is if you've promoted that this is an experience and not programming, you got to create, like when you're doing your dry erase board or you're brainstorming this thing, you go, okay, what do we make this feel like an experience? And here's what's one of the largest ways that you can make this feel like an experience and not program is the things that you're going to put around it. Like what happens when somebody walks up. So what I want to do is I want to pretend that you've just invited your friends. It's 7 days out. Carl's called you and said, hey, I need you to get somebody here. So you grab your neighbors and you're like, Carl, you better not do me wrong because this is my one shot with these neighbors I've been trying to get to church. And if I show up at this thing and it's not good, it's on Carl, right? So I want you to imagine you've grabbed the neighbors, you've pulled into the parking lot, okay? Walking up, you want that to feel great. You want to maybe see some cornhole, maybe some food trucks, but they're walking up going, this is great. You want to have photo booths. The number one thing that millennial couples are picking for their vacations, determine what Instagram photos are going to look like, which I personally think is insane, but we can call it insane or we can make sure we're getting photos. This is another great way to get information. Is you say, hey, if you'll give me your cell or your email, we'll send this photo directly to you. And then they'll get to open it. It's really cool. Okay. You want to have food. You want to have food. There's my dog. This is the full-time show here. You want to have food right there, but you don't want to have, you can have what you want, but I'm thinking no dinner because that becomes a chaos, almost as chaotic as it is in this room right now. Okay. And then, okay, imagine you've come in and I always like to hold the doors a little bit so they can hear it in there. And then you open the doors up, lots of music, beach balls going everywhere, trivia up on the thing, maybe some videos for that one guy that doesn't want to be there. There's just lots of energy. It doesn't feel like what they're used to. Like, what is happening? Again, this is the experience. No one's doing beach balls when we're watching Netflix. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to have a host to come up and welcome everybody. You wanted the energy to be crazy. Think youth pastor, but you want them to be super comfortable. You never want the audience to be working for them going, boy, this is their first gig. I mean, you want them. This isn't a chance to try out people. Like you want that to be great. This is my favorite host, Nancy Lowe. If she would let me, there's 20 pictures of her standing like this. So here's what she does at an event. She gets up, she warms up with everybody, and she says, hey, we're so glad you're here. We're going to do a thing called sit down, stand up. Again, they don't do that during Netflix. Stand up if you had to find childcare. Remain standing if that's just your oldest kid and you're hoping for the best. You know, ha, ha, ha. So they get the thing off of that. So she plays back and forth with the audience. So they're like, oh, they're talking to me. Again, the audience is going up, the audience is going down. So it's like, oh, we got to play outside and inside. Well, this is kind of fun. And then she brings up two couples that have been donated, have been told these guys will be funny up there. And she plays a game up there called the Have Fun Anyway Relay, where she has them to race each other while they do chores, where they diaper the baby / stuffed animal, where they put a trash bag in the trash can, and where they fold the towel. And then she goes, but here's the whole thing. You've got to all be doing it while kissing. And then she goes, I got some romantic music. The NFL theme song comes on. It's a big blast. We get a winner. And then this is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. She does a thing called Know It or Throw It. And she asks the wife a question. If she whispers it in her ear, and then the wife whispers the answer into Nancy's ear. And if the husband gets it right, he gets to know it. He gets to keep the gift card. If he doesn't, he has to throw it. And it's a gift card that's in a Nerf football that gets thrown into the audience. Okay. And then people, I was going to show you this real quick. Okay. So here's some of the shots of people doing sit down, stand up. Here's one of a couple on stage kissing. And this guy was like a host's dream. Would you look at this guy? He was so much fun. And these are people not doing praise and worship in church, which is great. These are people trying to catch gift cards, which you may feel uncomfortable about, but it's a lot of fun. Okay. And then we have a comedian that comes up. This time it was Andrew Stanley. He's unbelievable. And then this goofy guy comes and talks for a little bit. I try to do 80% comedy, 20% content. And this is also one of my favorite things. We talk about empathy, that it means I see you, I get you, I got you. So this was a church that we're at. When they walked out, everybody got a magnet to put that on the refrigerator about having to be more empathetic with their spouse. And this is one of my favorite part of the events is actually after this post event, right? Is after they get a little handout thing, then this is post event. This is the one where I feel like is the make it or break it of your event, especially for you guys. This is where you want people to find you. And as Carl says, you want to create a time to linger. We want them to linger before, and we want to linger after. And if you guys are talking about the city initiative, I would think crazy outside of the box when it comes to your booth. Don't do that thing where you put a 4x8 table in front of you with a skirt around it. Get rid of the table, right? I feel like they're, you know how we dodge those people at conferences? No, get rid of that. Have some creative background. Maybe it's right next to your photo booth opportunity, and you could be like, like the guy that's on the street going, hey, can I tell you about something? But whatever you do, like make that fun, remove that desk, and this is where you talk before and you talk after. You create a time to linger. I know CBC is going to do a thing like salsa dancing. You may not have to do salsa dancing, but what is that thing? In West Palm Beach at Christ Fellowship, that's when they had food trucks, and that's when they had desserts and had a good time. You want people hanging out. You don't want them dashing to your card because that's your moment, right? Now what? This is the other part. Now you've done your big event. Hopefully you've blown them away. They're all excited about it. You've gotten their information. Now you're going to know how to follow up. And the other thing, and I didn't mention this, is in the event, put a QR code up how they can find you. And what studies are showing is, I think, like my buddy John Acuff says this. He said, when he switched from text me to QR code, that it was 74 times more people connected. And I just thought, wow, that's a really big deal. So put your QR code, how they can find you, and people will find you. Make it part of your game. But also at the end of this thing, now that you've got your follow-up going, you're asking, what is your event follow-up? This is the most important part. What do you have in line in terms of what is your social going to look like? Because here's what you want. You want people that looked on social that they weren't there. You want to give them, reverse FOMO. You want them to be so sad that they missed it, because next time you've got momentum. And here's the thing, even if people don't go to the event and there's good word on the street about the event, it still has an impact on the initiative in that way too. So you want to follow up. You've had all your marketing before. Now, after, have some celebration. celebration on social. And then this is where you help people to find you. This is emails. This is, you guys are way smarter on this. Carl and his team know way more about this than I do, but there has to be strategic follow-up. So the question is, is it worth it? I say absolutely. And to use Carl's word, it gives you credibility, it gives you connection, and it gives you communication. And I think all three of those words could be wrapped up in this thing of momentum. For Carl to say people did not take us serious before an event, you're like, whoa. I mean, that is a big deal. So when we're talking about, is it worth it? It is huge for the initiative, for that energy. And at the end of the day, what I have to do, because as you can tell, I'm an excitable guy. What I have to do with all these is I'm praying for people before, is you go back and you just remember that this is what happens, right? Like this is what happens. We used to do our events at tables, and people would come in and couples would sit, and there'd be distance. And by the end of the night, their two seats have become like a love seat. And I would walk during the last song, and I would come around the back, and I would just sit and look and just thank the Lord to go, because I needed that. At the end of that event, I had to come back and go, this is why we're doing this. So when you guys think about date night, there are people, it's creative as you guys are, and you're so collaborative in your thinking. I mean, this whole thing is, the foundation is collaboration. It's find those people in your community and just blow people out of the water. It's not as difficult as it may sound, and it's absolutely worth it. So there you go. That's all I got. Sermonette for Christianettes right there.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. This was really great and incredibly valuable for all of our CMI leaders. And I know that this is going to help elevate their ministries to the next level. So we just want to say thank you for taking the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be with you guys as always.
All right. Well, next up on our agenda, I want to welcome back Carl to share his thoughts on community-wide date night. So Carl, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Ted, thank you so much for that. You didn't share your QR code, so I'm going to share it for you.
Okay.
But date nights obviously are great any time of year. Obviously, we're doing ours in September, but I want to just think about why February is such a great month to be strategic. You all know this, but maybe we'll be reminded of a few things. For every CMI leader, you're thinking about the different months of the year. There's different things happening in different seasons, and you're thinking about how you're bringing your community together around those seasons. But there's something really special that happens in February. We always try to think very strategically, extra strategically about February for these reasons. Number one, it's a new year, and in New Year's, people have new resolutions, and often those resolutions revolve around their most important, most meaningful relationships. The second thing that's key to it, it's usually a quiet news season. The media is looking for something to give you some free exposure for. And then obviously it's Valentine's Day, and every married man and every guy that's dating, he better be doing something for Valentine's Day. You need to give him an opportunity to do something really fun with his spouse or with that special person in his life. And also it's National Marriage Week. We're certainly a fan of that, right? So here it is, September, and it's a short runway to this coming February. So I want to talk about some different possibilities for our CMIs. Is that obviously, yes, you could do a big city-wide date night event. That's great. Or you could also do small groups covering the city. This is what we did one year. Instead of a big date night, is that we hosted, I think it was 13 Art of Marriage groups all over the city in February. And this was what was so cool about this is, obviously, this is a family life resource. Family Life is a big customer of your Christian radio stations. Why? Because most Christian content is pay for play. And so the Christian radio network in our city had a high motivation to do something really special. So they gave free airtime to Family Life to promote Art of Marriage. And then we were the partner who was on the ground helping these small groups happen. Again, 13 groups that happened all over the city that February. You can also do community proclamations. Our friends, the Angelos in Missouri, did such a great job, as well as our friends in Fresno last year. You could just simply do a community proclamation, or even if it was just a radio interview, just, hey, people are looking for content that's important to the season of the year. Is this an opportunity for you just to get on the radio and talk about marriage, talk about love, why it's important? You could even do a vow renewal. And I know Dennis and his team are going to do a vow renewal. Ted's going to talk more about that here shortly. But essentially, we got to be strategic with the call to action. We want to call people to invest in their marriage, certainly. We want to call people to serve the marriages that are around them. And certainly, we want to serve the marriages in the church. And this is why in all the world of content leaders for marriage, this is where my friend Ted Lowe stands apart, is because if you want to bring one person to the city who can do all these things, who can put on a date night event for you and be fun and entertaining and energetic, who can train your leaders in churches to start marriage ministries, who can help you do all of this and can support them with a support system. That's why I think Ted is so valuable to us as CMI leaders. Now there's that QR code that you can take a picture of real quick, and I'm going to have it. It's going to come up again. This is just your early warning to get your phone out. I'm going to say that your highest value lead in starting a new marriage ministry in a church is a passionate and motivated lay couple. So using a marriage event or a date night event as a great place to create new contacts, find new people, find new churches, to talk to them about why they're passionate about serving marriages, is a great thing to do around a date night event. It's very strategic. It's strategic to use this in February. It's strategic to use it to pursue the goals of the grant. The goals of the grant, what are they? Number one, the goal is to help churches start marriage ministries. Where do you find the people that will do that? You find that mostly in lay couples or church staff members. And whenever you do a citywide date night event, those people are going to show up. So thanks for letting me share, and thank you, Ted, for bringing us a lot of fun and information and laughter.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Carl. Up next on our agenda, we're excited to get to hear from Devin Tharp. And if you haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting Devin, he and his team lead the Greater Charlotte Marriage Initiative in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Devin has recently hosted an exciting date night there in Charlotte. And we just really wanted to give him the opportunity to share the factors that he believes contributed to the event's success. So Devin, whenever you are ready.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be able to join on the call. Normally I can't on a Friday because it's a date day for my wife and I. So, I got to put my marriage at number one, but I'm glad to be able to be on the call and share a little bit. So we did, was not a citywide date night that I'm going to share with you, but it was actually a date night event we did at our church, but it certainly could be a citywide initiative if you wanted it to be. But at Good Shepherd in Charlotte, we invited Dan and Danielle McCauley to come and basically lead the evening for us. We did an hour and a half. We did it late, 7 to 8:30. Just like Ted shared, we did just desserts and just promoted that. I think we charged a little bit, $10 for a couple, and provided desserts and refreshments as they came in. But Dan and Danielle McCauley, they just recently relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, and you can find them at marriedup.net. Dan and Danielle.org as well, but marriedup.net is also their website. And I would tell you they're really inexpensive in terms of what they provide, but they are a mix between comedy and music. Dan is an accomplished gospel music artist, has written a lot of music and sung a lot with different bands over the years. And he has this tremendous blend of comedy and music that is just hilarious. And so I wanted to share with you, can I share screen?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share with you the program flow. I won't go through all the details, but I wanted you to be able to see what the program flow looked like. But it is 90 minutes. So that was great for us because we kind of like shorter events, especially for a lot of our families have kids, and, getting them away for more than 2 hours is a challenge. So 90 minutes. And there's some slides that are going on as people are coming in. Dan and Danielle are part of a Canadian TV show called A Better Us. And so they're promoting that as people are coming in. And of course, we had refreshments and things like that. But one of the first things they did, and I'll just leave this up and I'll talk through it. One of the first things they did that I loved is they did love songs through the decades. So they started in 2010, went down to 2000s, 1990s, 80s, 70s. And we had couples that had been married 50 years, and we had couples that had been married 6 months. So it was awesome because everybody knew a song, at least from one of the decades, and he just had us sing along. So it created this really light atmosphere, this really fun environment to be in as we're all singing and just sharing the songs that we love together. And he's kind of interrupting the songs every now and then with a funny quip or a funny joke. And so then he moves into talking a little bit about their story and shares some lightheartedness about their coming together, their meeting, their dating relationship, and then ultimately getting to know her or asking her to marry him. And during the course of that, it's really lighthearted. And he talks about how we all have this kind of dreaminess around marriage, but then they actually got married and, started the everyday issues that are the ins and outs of difficulty in marriage. And they share really personally about some of the struggles that they had. And he ends up going into a couple songs that he wrote for his wife that are romantic in nature, and they sound, really great. But then he shares personally his struggle with how he lived that out. So it's really this authentic moment that every person in the room can relate to. And so after that, he kind of lightens the mood again with this song called Things Kids Say. And it's like, if you're married and you've got kids, you've heard your kids say ridiculous things. And he put it all to music, and it's absolutely hilarious. I mean, I'm a laugher by nature, and I was rolling on the floor. My stomach hurt at the end of the night. We laughed so much that night. It was just incredible. But then they end the night with 7 ways to a fresh marriage in 7 days. And they go through these 7 things, nothing real groundbreaking here, things that all of us know as marriage leaders, but biblically based principles that can be applied to your marriage. And they kind of wrap that up with each of them going back and forth and sharing about those principles. And then at the end, the thing I loved is they actually gave that content out as a handout. And it was, here's the 7 things, talk through that as your homework on your way home. And some of our couples decided on the way home, they were going to go out to dinner or go just have a late night coffee together. And they talked through those things. And just to wrap up my time, I got a text from a couple that came on that night. And this is just a testimony of the power of the date night. Stephanie says this: we went out for some late night sushi afterwards. So sorry for the late text. Just wanted to tell you guys, and please share that with the team. I have a team that helps me put this together. That the event led to one of the best conversations we've had in a long time. It's not easy in our season of life to feel connected or to talk about anything other than sleep schedules and feeding. They have 3 kids under the age of 3, so that's their life. But she's just said it's so needed for us, and we're so grateful for the team efforts. I know other couples must have been blessed by it, just as we were. So, just a little testimony about the night and Dan and Danielle McCauley. And if you guys are looking for an easy win, it was an easy win for us. We hired them. We rolled out some refreshments, put them on the stage. They did the rest. And our couples are still talking about that date night event. And we packed the room. We were able to hold a couple hundred people, and we filled the room. We actually overfilled it. We had people standing in the back. So it was a great, great night.
Well, thank you so much, Devin, for taking the time to share about your incredible date night. We know that it's hard for you to be here and that this is your day that you set aside. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to be here. And we loved hearing all about your date night. So thank you. And coming up next, we're going to get to hear from Ted Randall of Live the Life in Florida. And the Live the Life team, they really have an innovative idea for National Marriage Week. And Ted is going to share their plans with us today. So Ted, whenever you are ready, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Do you ever find yourself in a lineup and you're kind of wondering, why am I in this lineup? And that's kind of I'm feeling at the moment. Like, okay, all right, yeah. So I had this idea a while back. There's a bakery in our town called Fat and Weird Cookies, and they were trying to break a world record, a Guinness World Record. And my kids, they watch this YouTube program called Dude Perfect, and if you've ever seen it, they are always trying to break a world record. And so my wife and I and our kid, we went to this event where this company was trying to break this world record for the most people simultaneously dunking a cookie into milk. And you know, it sounds ridiculous. But on the way out, I mentioned to my wife, I said, you know, something that would be cool is if we tried to break the world record for world's largest vow renewal. You know, what might that look like? And you know, and so I broke out my phone and just kind of researched, like, how many people would that be? And the answer is like roughly 1,200 couples. So 2,400 people, 1,200 couples. That's the one site world record. And then the multi-site is like 1,700 people. And so that's kind of how the idea started. It was like, man, that would be really cool. I think people would want to participate in that. And so I took that to our marriage team at the church and kind of shared with them. It's like, hey, this is a silly idea I have. This may be a terrible idea. I don't know. And they actually really liked it. But what's cool, and it's funny how this works, is one of the people in the group, they took it and they made a flyer and they presented it to me and they said, Ted, and this was in 2022. They said, Ted, in 2024, or in 2024, we're gonna do this. And she handed me this flyer that she had made. And I was like, man, there's something about a t-shirt and a flyer. You know, I can get on board if there's a t-shirt and a flyer. And so we batted this idea around about how to do this. And but I wanted to bring it to the Bay County Marriage Initiative, or the Bay County Marriage and Family Initiative, and kind of share, like, how could we as a community celebrate Marriage Week, and what's something we could do? That was the topic of conversation, is what could we do? And in Bay County, we're one of the most divorce rate per capita communities in our state. And that's kind of what we get known for. And so one of our goals as a community initiative is what could we be known for? And I would love for us to be known for, you know, not a vow renewal, but the place that is about marriage. And I thought that might be a good way of doing it. I've since abandoned that idea, and I think one of you should do that idea because it's incredible, and I think that would be awesome. Now, side note, I've heard that it's 40 grand to get Guinness to come out. So anyway, figure that out. But we took this to our meeting, and I said, this was the idea. And a few problems came up. We're an interdenominational group, and like in the Catholic Church, there's no mechanism for vow renewal. That's not a thing that gets done. And so I threw this idea out, and as in a collaboration. And what we came up with, and I love this, is we are attempting as a community to put together something for Marriage Week that any church could do. So there's like let's say there's a small version, a medium version, and a large version. And so what we would love for churches to do is participate in a vow renewal as a community. And we're still working this out. We're still fleshing this out. But in the Catholic Church, they could do a marriage blessing. And what's cool about that is maybe your church couldn't do a full-blown vow renewal, but maybe on Sunday you would feel comfortable doing a marriage blessing for couples. And so honestly, I think that might be what my church chooses to do, is maybe have a date night on Friday and then have a marriage blessing on Sunday as a part of the service. And so I say I want to make a few points about it. This started out as some little silly idea that I had. And what I'm so thankful for is I have become more open-handed to what others' input is and what others thought, that I didn't, you know, say, no, we're doing this world record thing. And so that's been the power of working with a group of people, working with a community, and trying to make a solution that fits for everyone. And Carl, I meant to text you and ask you, you use a term, but there's a term for an event that anyone could do, and like an entry-level event. What's the term you use?
It's called a threshold experience.
A threshold experience. And so one of the things about offering, so we're actually going to write these blessings out and offer them to churches in our communities. Like, hey, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that is that's that threshold for some people to engage with us as a community marriage initiative, something we're doing for them. But then there's a small version, a medium version, and a large version, and so you can sort of choose your own adventure. And so that's what the Bay County Marriage and Family Initiative is working towards for Marriage Week.
I love hearing that. And Ted, don't sell yourself short, because we always love hearing from you. You know, you've always got great insights for us. So, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your plan for National Marriage Week. I think that's going to be amazing. So we're gonna dive into our Q&A session. We understand if you're not able to stay. I know it's the end of our session, the end of our hour. So if you need to leave, that's fine. We will be posting the entire training video on our YouTube channel following the event, so you can watch any part that you missed there. But we do want to offer that opportunity for any of you to ask any question that you may have for any of our speakers. So if you do have a question, if you would raise your virtual hand.
Okay, I unmuted. Something's wrong with my video, so I can't be seen. However, I can be heard.
Yes.
Just as a reminder, would you just remind everyone when National Marriage Week is? Because not everyone might know the dates.
Yes, National Marriage Week is the week of February 7th through the 14th. So the week of Valentine's Day. Great. All right, I see Bruce and Lita, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, this is a question for Ted Lowe, or anyone actually, because our church is going through a big remodel right now, and I'm wondering how effective it is to have it in a hotel ballroom, or something like that. Should it be at a church site or for date night?
Yeah, I think a neutral, like if I said what's the ideal for city initiatives, like, and we always work back from ideal, right? Is there a neutral location that everybody could be? Is there, it's funny though, churches right now have better AV sometimes than those kind of venues. So you got to watch that and be careful with that. But if there's a neutral venue that would do it, or maybe you get if your church is going through a remodel, then get with the other churches and say, can we have it there? And we'll do all the volunteerism there. So I just think that's, and I watched that at the San Antonio Marriage Initiative event we did. Like, one of the churches had an event and they actually canceled theirs and said, we're going to bring our people here and volunteer from you. And so I love that collaborative thing. So yeah, I think there's you can think way outside the box for spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and if anyone else has any other questions, you can raise your hand. But we did have one question in the chat that I'll go ahead and just read to you. And I think this question is for you, Carl, and that is, they're wanting to know, what was the thing that you did that made the event go from 300 to 1,100?
We had conversations with 300 people, but what the value of those conversations was, with most of those conversations with leaders, and Ted brought that up in his presentation, was so right, because you want to connect with leaders who can then invite others, and it was ultimately the leaders who invited and brought the people. That's what went from 300 to 1,100.
Right.
One thing I wanted to add to that, something else that Ted said that was an experience we had at North Star Church. Whenever we did Adventures in Marriage at North Star Church, and we had roughly 6 couples signed up the week before we started. And then the lead pastor and his wife said, hey, and we're actually going to Adventures in Marriage. And then we had 40 couples at the end of that Sunday, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And so the value of the senior leadership engaging that and encouraging that is just beyond measure.
The other thing, I think, that I'll just hop in here. The other thing is, if your host church is a fairly large church that's really bought in, that really helps, because if you have a great partner in a host church, a lot of times they can bring half of the people. Ted's event, we're at 2 weeks out, actually over 2 weeks out, we have 1,600 people registered for his event. And so I think we'll be 2,000, maybe 2,500 by the time we get there. But that's because our host church is all in. Ted, you'll love. Oh, you're gonna love as you get to see. One of our pastors is going to wear a leisure suit, and so our pastors have been encouraged. They're going to be on stage. They're going to do a newlywed game. Ted's real aware of this, and I think half the people, are just waiting to see what our senior pastor in a leisure suit. So that's pretty good.
That's great. All right, I see we have a question from Dave Jackson, and Dave, you are muted. There you go.
Actually, it's from Jim, but that's okay. We're watching together. So the question is, hearing about these big events, my idea is, what's the regulation you would give us? What's the guidelines you'd suggest for the bigger and better problem? Because once you do this, if you bring in Ted Lowe, then the next time you got to bring in somebody that's better than Ted Lowe. And there's got to be more games, more food, all that kind of stuff. So particularly for smaller churches, smaller communities, what are some learned guidelines that you'd share with us?
I'll step in and say that hasn't been a problem for us, because we support churches at any size and scale. So we will have a lot of couples that will come to this big event, and they want to do it in their own church under their own terms, and even at a smaller scale. But it gives us a chance to support them. So that hasn't been a problem for us, maybe others.
All right. I see Bruce and Lita, you have your hand raised.
Well, I do have another question again for Ted Lowe and maybe others. How far out should we start planning? I mean, I know, Carl, you said this is National Marriage Week's come up in February. If we start planning now, is that enough time to get all this together and to and how far out should you start promoting with I know Ted mentioned the initial getting that out there, the initial word as soon as possible. What are time frames?
Yeah, I was so listening to TED Talk, and then there's TED Talks today. I was thinking about what Ted was saying, like there are plug and play, like we do a plug and play thing. This couple does a plug and thing. Like there are groups of people that can do this. What we can't do that you can do is putting all the great stuff, putting all that around it. And again, it doesn't have to be crazy extravagant. It's just got to be experiential. Or maybe the next year your question was soon. I think you're fine right now to market right now for February to do that. Like you just got to decide what it's going to be, and then just start talking date night. You can say date night for love and laughter, a 2-hour experience for couples. Boom. And then you can build it out. But again, it's just brand, and then, that looks fun and that looks different.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me add one more thing. There's a special problem with Valentine's Day in that you have a real short runway in terms of the actual marketing. We have found, we've done so many February events, and we have found that you can't market. You can get on people's save the date before Christmas, but man, when their head is in Christmas, they're not thinking about anything else. And then comes New Year's. And then there's that first week that people are just getting reoriented. We don't start marketing until the second week in January, but so it's a super short runway. So we have to be prepared to hit it hard and fast to make that real short runway work. It can work, but boy, you have to be prepared.
All right. Well, we have a question from Ron McLean in Fresno.
Yes, thank you. Do you find that doing these events on like a Friday night or Saturday work better than, let's say, a Wednesday or Thursday night?
It has been, I tell churches all the time, like they'll say, when should we have it? And I'm like, your context way better than I do. And so I always, for timing, I'll tell church leaders, really trust yourself, because calendar, like what's a big deal in our community. I have been so surprised though how many churches are having them on Thursday night and they're filling up, and I'm like, I never saw that coming. In fact, when someone invited us for the first time on a Thursday night, I thought, I don't think this is a great call, and they filled the place. And I think what they're finding is people would rather miss their kids' practice on a Thursday than their game on a Saturday. So I've been blown away with that. I know Sunday nights were a good night for us. Fridays, ironically to me, are one of the when we'd do a Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night event at our church. Friday night was always the lowest energy. And it feels like, hey, Friday night we're going out, but it just felt like people were breaking their necks to get there and they were exhausted. So, but I would say more than anything to trust yourself on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We have now a question from Dennis.
Thanks. Hey, I kind of want to revisit that question that Bruce brought up in terms of the timing, whether we've got enough runway to be doing something this kind of February. Within the context, Bruce, my thought on that is kind of depends upon which voice you're asking from. So in other words, Bruce, if you're asking, is there time as you at your individual church to be putting together a church-wide date night for this February? I would say probably yes. But if you're asking, gee, if we're a CMI, do we as a CMI have time starting from ground zero to be presenting the concept of a community-wide date night, trying to get a bunch of buy-in on it and do it in time for this February? I would think probably not. Now, I'd be open to Carl's reaction, feedback on that as well. But, if you're doing community-wide, multi-church getting on it, it takes a while to get those kind of groups on board. So depending upon what voice you were asking the questions from, I think might be the answer. Carl, I'm be interested in getting your reaction to what I just said.
I think you're exactly right. The thing we always say, people own what they help to create. So if you really want broad buy-in, you got to give people time to help ideate with you and think through it and develop a sense of ownership. So yeah, from that context, a year, like you said, for a church, and maybe it would be a starting point. It's just a great partner church would just do it to kind of give people vision, and you could make that. So 5 months minimum, a year is ideal. But you're right on, Dennis. Agree with you 100%.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. And I guess I do have one other question related to that. Is there a best month outside of February? I mean, that's an obvious month, but if it was a church-wide or community-wide, do you feel like there's better months than others?
I would say depending on when school's starting back, 2 to 3 weeks after school started back, because people are in the mode of starting fresh first of the year in fall. So we found fall to be, it feels like for us at least, again, it's got so much to do with school, because you can't do it at the first because they're too scattered, but about 2 or 3. And what we found is we took September, October, and for like the first half of November is usually pretty strong.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I see that Melissa Vandenberg also, she shared in the chat and another event idea for February is the new Art of Marriage will be released in January, and she shared the link to that in the chat there. It's familylife.com/coming soon. And so if anyone would like to check that out, the link is there in the chat. And I see, Bill, you had your hand raised. Do you have a question?
I have a comment to make back to Carl on the short span for marketing on Valentine's Day. We've done this for some of our events in February, March, and April, is for a Christmas gift for the spouse to give his wife something nice to do, like going away on we're going to a special comedy date night, fun type of thing, rather than giving her a vacuum cleaner like I did one Christmas.
Bill, you learn something new every day. That's what I love about this community is I have never thought about that idea because I made the vacuum cleaner experience. It wasn't a vacuum cleaner. It was something for her car because she loves her, but man, that was a disaster. I'm right there with you, bro.
That's great. Thank you for that, Bill. Does anyone else have any questions or comments that they would like to share before we go? I see Amy is saying that they create a stocking stuffer and promote it in advance that way. That's a great idea too. Well, if no one else has any more questions or comments, then I guess that concludes our training event on hosting community-wide date nights. And we really hope that you enjoyed the content and the training today, and we hope that it's beneficial to you and your team. And don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything at all that we can do to support you. You can always reach me at sammy.soltmans@gmail.com. And once again, thank you for joining us and have a great weekend. Goodbye.